Every effective presentation container has 5 core elements: sight, sound, sensation, yourself, and the bridge. Hi, I'm Kunle. I train professionals and executives to deliver effective presentations to audiences of any size. Some call me the presentation professor, but I didn't start out that way. The first time I was in front of an audience, I crumbled like a pack of cards. The host had to come and collect me from the stage. There were hundreds of eyes watching, and you can imagine my agony as I was shoved away in shame. Fortunately, my story didn't end there, and that's because presentation skills are learnable. Fast forward to today, I now teach presentation skills to professionals, and this enables them to present their ideas, their projects, and their products with confidence and to accomplish their goals faster. I created the Presentation School podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. You, my friend, can sharpen your communication skills so that you can effectively present your ideas with confidence, whether you're presenting to one person or you're presenting to an audience. If you're an ambitious professional or one in the making who is looking to advance your career and your presentation skills, of course, you're in the right place because presentation skills are learnable. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode of the Presentation School podcast. Today is also a foundational class because we're covering the second half of what we did last week. And you're wondering, oh, Kunle, what second half? What last week? Well, if you don't know, now you know. Here's what the first foundation is. The main idea is that a presentation is the process of transferring information from one point to the other successfully. And we said that a presentation has 2 core components. The first one being the content and the second being the container. Last episode, we covered the content. If you missed out on that or you need a refresher of that, go over to episode 1 and you grab that in. And today we're focusing on the container. Every effective presentation container has 5 core elements: sight, sound, sensation, yourself, and the bridge. In this episode, we're going to have a look at your role as a container. We're going to have a look at the tools, techniques, and strategies that you can use to remove natural roadblocks that can hinder your message and information from getting to your audience successfully. You learn what I use personally to remove these roadblocks so that my message can travel unhindered and accomplish its purpose. So let's dig in. Question: what does an athlete, an attorney, and an architect have in common? Yes, I know they all start with the letter A, but apart from that, what else? Aha, that's a trick question. Well, here's what they have in common. They all have to prepare, show up, and deliver consistently. Yes. And as a professional, you have to do the same. You have to prepare, show up, and deliver consistently. And let's imagine John. John is doing this. He's preparing and showing up and delivering at a high level. His manager says, John, wow, whatever you're smoking, I want you to teach it to the rest of the team so that they can get it and deliver high level results like yourself. And John says, of course, I'm happy to show them what I'm smoking so that we just knock the ball out of the park. Now, John has something going for him. Already he has a content. The content is what he has been smoking. Seriously, what's with this smoking business? I don't smoke, so I wouldn't say John should be smoking. In any case, what I mean is John has his act together. He's prepared, he shows up, and he delivers every time. And this is his content. How he does this is what he wants to teach to the rest of the team. So John has a content, and John has now become the container. Now, for John to be able to deliver his content successfully, he will encounter roadblocks. Lots of roadblocks as to the mindset of his colleagues, as to the physical environment, and so many obstacles which we'll cover in this episode. Let's imagine that John's presentation is a 3-course meal: a starter, main dish, and the dessert. If any of this is missing, it's no longer a 3-course meal. We know that John is very diligent. So he's done an outstanding work putting this 3-course meal together. What do you think will affect the way that John's food is consumed? Correct answer. The way it is served, the way it is presented, and the way he delivers it to them. As a presenter, this is what you have to focus on. This is the other half of your job. The way you prepare the food is one thing. That's the content area of things. The most important thing at this point is that how do you present it and how do you deliver the food on the table? So what you take away from this episode is to help you identify what you need to do so that your 3-course meal is gobbled up with speed, satisfaction, and special requests. And special request, of course, is, can I have some more? Can you please come back? And can I have your contact? And so on and so forth. So regardless of how amazing your content is, we've established that it's only 50% of the job. The other 50% depends on the way the container delivers the content. That's good news and bad news. Bad news is many people are horrible containers. Good news is containers can be converted. And because you're here, you are on your journey to conversion. Here's the thing. Everyone sees the world based on their life experiences, their previous knowledge, and their natural bias. And that's where the bad containers fail and fumble because they are unable to get their work past those barriers into the heart of their audience because they don't have the right tools. Your case is now different because today I'll share with you the tools and strategies that I personally use to get my information past the gatekeepers of my audience's heart. And you'll be able to do exactly the same thing. It's not rocket science. It's only a skill. And like I said, presentation skill is learnable. One thing you have to keep in mind is that you can't influence people's history. However, you can influence their current reality as long as they are part of your audience. And I'll introduce you to 3 delivery drivers that I use to accomplish this whenever I'm making a presentation. The 3 delivery drivers are sight, sound, and sensation. So we start with sight. Did you know, by the way, that approximately 70% of all sensory receptors in the body are in the eyes? Sensory receptors are specialized cells or organs that respond to specific information from the environment. That means you and I will rely hugely on visual cues for gathering information, making sense of our surroundings, and navigating the world. We rely on that a lot. And in case you're wondering, what has that got to do with presentation? My friend, everything. Everything your audience sees affects your presentation, positively or negatively. Your job, therefore, is to ensure that everything in sight creates positive impressions and supports your message. Now, when in doubt, remember the recipe. It either helps or hurts. It's never neutral. What happens when you step onto a stage? What do the audience see first? They see you. That means you're up for assessment. You may have heard that man should not judge a book by its cover. Now that's a good idea, but it's not going to happen. As we've established, human beings are visual beings, literally, because it's estimated that about 80% of all the information processed by the brain is visual. So it's coming in through the eyes. Now you may think, oh, why should people do that? And so on. There's a very famous quote that I like. It says that the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. My friend, you're not the Lord. So you judge by what you see. Many people judge by what they see. Anyway, that's a side note. I thought you might enjoy that. Knowing what we now know, that human beings make decisions based on their appearance. They judge a book by their cover. The question is, how do you position your presentation in such a way that it gets you positive judgment points? Because as we know, you will be judged. That's out of your hand. What's in your control is how will you show up? And here's what I'd like you to remember. You can influence your image and how you show up, but your audience will interpret what they see based on their history, based on their experience, and based on their natural bias. There's nothing you can do about that. But you have a 50% chance of showing up. Instead of scoring 0, at least you start from point 50, if you get what I mean. Not long ago, I took a 2-week vacation with my daughter to northern Germany, and my wife joined us a week later. We went to see a magic show. And when the magician found out that it was my daughter's birthday, she got a special treatment. He called her up, sang for her, clapped for her, and gave her a magic wand. Then he brings out a blank book, opened it up, and we could see white and blank. Then he closes the book, asked my daughter to tap the book with her magic wand. He then opens it up again. Suddenly, there appeared some images in the book, black and white cartoon images. I'm thinking, that's interesting. He closes the book again and asks her to tap the book. She does, and this time he opens it up and the book is filled with colored images. My jaw nearly hit the floor. I started thinking, my daughter is now a magician. Of course, I've never seen a live magic show before. So seeing this for the first time and having my daughter in the middle of it was, to say the least, magical. Like I said, your audience will interpret what they see based on how they show up. As I've never seen a magic show before, this was amazing to me. It was like, wow, what is going on? I thought, my goodness, my daughter is now a magician. Anyway, my daughter only needed to perform this magic one time without the magician's help. And you know the rest of the story. Lesson learned. The magician influenced what I saw by packaging the image, adding a second element and a third element, which we'll talk about later. But everything added up to become magic. Somehow, I wish he didn't give the magic book to my daughter, because we now have the book without the magic. I said all that, my friend, to say this. Whenever you're in doubt, remember the recipe. You're a book. Your audience will judge you by your cover. So you want to ensure that you show up in a way that supports your message. Let's do a little deep dive into the first element, sight. It is scientifically proven that the eyes of your audience will pass information to their brain about yourself, your visual aids, your presentation environment. And all these three things will combine with the way that you will be perceived by your audience. Many years ago in Manchester, I remember I was in a church building doing some Sunday school activity in the evening with some kids. A friend was supposed to come and meet me in there in the evening. As I rang the bell, one of the kids went to attend to him, but she didn't open the door. Comes back and says, "There's a rich man at the door." I'll never forget. How did she know that he was a rich man? I assure you, he wasn't wearing any gold bracelet, gold necklace, and bling earrings, no limousine in front of the church, nothing like that. He wore a decent suit and a winter jacket. I said all that to say this. When you're presenting, ensure that what you look like represents what you're saying. If it doesn't, it begins to take the legs from under your table and your credibility begins to erode. Not on purpose though, because this happens automatically, even without the knowledge of your audience. They don't know. It's just happening. So you need to package yourself and your presentation as one thing and as one theme. So when in doubt, again, remember the recipe. You're a book, your audience will judge you by your cover. Let's talk about the second element of this site. It's your visual aids. Your visual aids are the essential tools for enhancing your presentation and engaging your audience. Don't get it twisted. Now, you don't always need visual aids. Many people conclude that if you want to make a presentation, you always need the slide deck, you need PowerPoint, and so on and so forth. I've run a full day's training before without one slide, not one. And it was spot on from 9 to 5 p.m. and people could barely leave their seats. And we didn't use any slides. Anyway, I said that to say you don't always need visual aids for your presentation. So a couple of things for your visual aids whenever you will need them. So the first one to think about is the images and your graphics on your slides. If you're going to use visual aids or slides, you want to incorporate relevant images and graphics that can effectively convey information which will enhance your audience understanding of the subject matter. So visuals such as photographs and diagrams and infographics can help you illustrate the key points you're trying to share. And they also help break down complex concepts that make the abstract ideas more concrete. So it's very good in this kind of scenario. Otherwise, you can do without them. If what you're sharing doesn't need that, you don't always have to have that. Again, when you use visually appealing text, this can complement images and reinforce your key messages. which nicely drives us to the next point, by the way: texts, typography, and bullet points. Now, I know what texts are. I know what bullet points are, and you know too. But typography, what in the world is that? I'm not a fan of big words like typography. So I looked it up for you. Typography is the way that you arrange written language to make it readable and visually appealing. An effective use of typography includes your font size, your font style, and the color, which can definitely improve readability and draw attention to important information. Now, if we move away from that, the next is bullet points. Use the rule of 5. 5 bullet points per slide, 5 words per bullet point. Everybody and their dog knows this. Well, maybe not everybody, but Fite definitely knows this because he's been in a couple of presentation classes. He knows what's going on. So finally, the text. The text that you use will be referring to the headings and the captions, which can help you to structure your content and to guide your audience's attention. So the third ingredient is your presentation environment, which strongly suggests if it's within your power, you create an excellent environment and you control the room for effective presentation outcome. Your presentation environment plays a significant role in shaping your audience's experience of your presentation. And you don't want to play with that. First of all, is the venue as a whole. You want to ensure that it's well equipped and has comfortable seating arrangement, adequate lighting, and proper acoustics, so people can hear you well, see you well, and feel comfortable when they're sat. The venue should be spacious enough, if you are able to control that, to accommodate the audience comfortably without feeling crowded. Then again, having said that, if you go to a football match, what's happening in the stadium? I rest my case. But then again, that's a different kind of presentation. The second thing to consider is the visual setup. You want to ensure that the presentation area is equipped with a high quality projectors or screens and audio-visual equipment that will display your slides or play some videos and other visual aids clearly. Additionally, you should pay attention to the fact that everyone in the room is able to see the screen from every part of the room. That's important. Finally, engagement spaces. You want to ensure that the environment includes spaces for audience engagement, such as designated areas for interactive activities, group discussions, Q&A sessions, etc. These spaces should be easily accessible and, of course, conducive so that it can foster dialogue and participation. With this, you are headed in the right direction. But the main idea is that a proper presentation environment is a place that is well equipped, accessible, and comfortable, which allows you, the presenter, and your audience to focus on the content and to interact effectively. This is all you need. When in doubt, remember the recipe. An uncomfortable environment makes your audience uncomfortable, and that may result in an uncomfortable outcome for you. In Germany, when someone is behaving out of character, we say, "Hast du einen Clown gefrühstückt?" Did you eat a clown for breakfast? Sometimes when I'm in a meeting, I find myself saying, "Kunle, you talk too much. Did you eat a radio for breakfast this morning?" Everybody then laughs. Then I ask a question, how did we get here? Well, people do a recap and they realize how we got to where we were. So in our case, we were talking about the fact that an effective presentation has 2 components. The first component is content and the other is the container. In episode 1, we dealt with the content. In this episode, we're dealing with the container. We discussed that you, as the container and the presenter, you have the responsibility to ensure that your presentation crosses the mental, emotional, and sometimes physical barriers that stand in the way of your message getting to the desired destination successfully. To give Godspeed to your message, you need 3 delivery drivers: sight, sound, and sensation. We've covered the first driver, sight. Now we're going to cover the second driver, sound. And that's how we got here. Sound. The sound you produced is based on the words that you write. There's a concept I work with when the presentation is important to me. And by the way, all presentations are important to me because that might be the first and the last time someone in the audience is going to hear me speak or present. Anyway, here's the concept. I say that you write for radio. Again, the way your presentation comes out is impacted by the way that your presentation is written. Do I sound like a broken record? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But because this episode isn't about content writing, I'll leave that for another episode. Ideally, when you're presenting, your audience is listening. But here is the thing. Listening can be active and passive. Your goal as a presenter is to have your audience actively listening all the time. That's not an easy thing to do, especially if you're focused on your PowerPoint, your visual aids, and so on. You're not engaging with your audience. In addition to ensuring that you focus on your audience and engage with them, you greatly benefit from paying attention to the following. 1. Autobahn awareness. 2. Chunking. What is Autobahn awareness? Well, some time ago, my mom came to visit us in Germany. We lived in St. Peter-Ording at the time, which is home to the longest beachfront in Germany. But because my mom was traveling back the next morning, we spoke long into the night, or into the morning, should I say. Suddenly, I woke up and it was almost 7 a.m. Her flight was around 10:30. I cannot tell you how we got everything into the car, found ourselves on the way to the airport, and those who know me can tell you, Kunle drives at snail speed. Every time people will complain, Kunle, you're too slow, drive faster, and so on. I said, come on, please leave me alone. Nobody gets arrested for driving slowly. Oh, by the way, I can't say that anymore because a couple of months ago, a police officer pulled me over just outside of London and asked to see my license. I said, yeah, of course. I gave it to him. Everything was in order. And he said, sir, did you know why I stopped you? I said, I have no idea. Sir, on this road, you should be driving 70 miles per hour. Your speed is too slow. I know you're trying to be careful as a driver, but the idea is that you should be closer to 70 rather than far behind 70. So now I know you can be arrested actually for driving too slowly. Anyway, back to the Autobahn awareness. We got onto the Autobahn, and that's the first time in my life that I understood what the Autobahn means and why it's a really genius idea. It means you can drive safely at whatever speed pleases you. Believe it or not, we made it to the airport and she got onto the aircraft. Usually it takes me over 2 hours door to airport, but I still can't do the maths and how I managed to make it to the airport. I said all that to say this. On the Autobahn, you're driving at literally breakneck speed and no one is going to stop you. In any case, my Autobahn awareness came alive from that day. And some people, when they present with the Autobahn speed, it's because they are nervous and they couldn't catch their breath and they tried to climb, and that's it. You couldn't really get what I was saying, but that's the main idea. So when you drive your presentation that way, your audience might see through it, but they're hardly taking anything with them. So your presentation gets left behind on the Autobahn, and you don't want to have that happen to you. So you drive at snail speed, if you will. Having said that, what can help you with that is a technique called chunking. Chunking helps you to group words for easier delivery. It helps you to slow down. This technique will help you maintain a steady pace and, of course, deliver your message more smoothly. It helps a lot, I can tell you that, because it also improves clarity and coherence in your speech. It allows you and your audience to process information better. And the third driver, sensation. Oh, this is the bomb. It's everything. Because as Maya Angelou said, people may not remember exactly what you did or what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. Sensation is all about making people have a feeling based on your desired outcome for your presentation. Feeling in this context is an emotional state or reaction. If you want to connect at an emotional level, you will have to operate from an emotional space. In practice, this means you choose the emotion you want people to experience. You pick the most suitable words that fit with that, and then you emote your words as you release them out. I'll just explain this briefly. Hi there. I'm happy you're here for this podcast today. You heard what I said? I'm going to say it again. Hi there. I'm happy you're here for this podcast today. I've used the exact same words. Can you tell the difference? If you come back with me, in the first example, I say the words. In the second example, I emotify the words. Emotifying words is sometimes the difference between lightning and lightning bug. To get your audience into the space of sensation, you need to use speech, speed, and simulation. Speech, I know. Speed, I know. As for this simulation, who is he? Or in this case, it. As I said before, big words don't come natural to me. You may have guessed that. I've often found it useful to break them down so it's easier for me to explain in my head. Imagine you're trying to recreate the sensation of driving on the Autobahn with my mom. We wake up and it's 7 a.m. We quickly put everything in the car. And before we know it, we were on the Autobahn. And I'm driving past. I didn't know I could drive so fast all the way to Hamburg. Unfortunately, the Autobahn was just miraculously clear. Before I knew it, we were at the airport. Now, that's simulation. For someone who's never been behind the wheel, simply describing it in words might not be enough. You need to employ speech to set the scene, adjust your speed of delivery to match the intensity, and most importantly, use simulation. Simulation here means utilizing tools like virtual reality or to mimic the experience as close as possible. So in this case, I'm not using any virtual reality. I'm using my and my mom was holding tight and it was like I was going to take off like an aeroplane, but I didn't take off. I drove safely. And of course, I'm here talking to you, so I didn't die. Essentially, simulation is a combination of the elements that truly put someone into the sensation that you're trying to convey. That's simulation. All your acts, all your word, all your body language, everything adds on to physically remove somebody and put them inside the situation that you're trying to convey. By the way, simulation is not just in the delivery. It has to be built in from the content creation stage. You use tools like emotional trigger, words, and phrases to be able to get that across successfully. So the more emotional trigger words you use, the more emotions you trigger. And the more emotions you trigger, the more memorable your presentation or your speech will be. So again, emotifying is electrifying emotions into the sound that you're producing, either negative energy or positive energy. When in doubt, remember the recipe. Don't just speak, emotify your words. Now that's a truckload of information right there. I know there are two other elements that we haven't looked at, yourself and the bridge, but I don't want to overload you. We're not leaving this world anytime soon. So let's do a brief recap of what we've covered so far. Until now, we've looked into the elements of effective presentation, focusing particularly on your role as the presenter, the container of your message. And here's the breakdown of the key points we've covered. We talked about sight. We looked into the importance of visual cues in presentations and how they can significantly impact your audience's perception. That by leveraging your visual aids effectively and paying attention to your personal presentation, you can create positive impressions and support your message. We suggested that you should be deliberate in how you show up when you're presenting and how anything that can be visually captured in your presentation should be particularly designed to support your presentation. When in doubt, remember the recipe. You're a book. People will judge you by your cover. Number 2, we looked at sound. This is how you project your work and your voice in a way that fires up active listening and engagement. We looked at a technique called chunking, which facilitates smoother delivery. And we talked about maintaining a steady pace and keeping your audience actively engaged throughout the presentation, which is influenced by the sound that comes out of your mouth. We talked about the speed and your pitch and your vocal variety and so on and so forth. When in doubt, remember the recipe. Your speaking speed and your tone of voice form images in the mind of your audience. And 3, we looked at sensation, and this is the power of emotions. We explored the importance of evoking desired feelings in your audience. We looked at a technique which includes using emotional trigger words and emotifying speech to create a memorable and impactful presentation experience. When in doubt, remember the recipe. People may forget what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. Throughout this episode, the main idea is that presentation skills are learnable, and practical tips and strategies have been provided to help you enhance your presentation delivery. But in the final analysis, presentation is communication. And you remember, keep the presentation truth in mind. Presentation skills are learnable. See you next week, same time, same place. Until then, keep your flag flying.